You are golden, you are good enough, like your fire from within. You're inspired, you inspire us, it's gonna be all good again.
Welcome back to the Roar Indie Author Interview Series. I'm your host, Brianna Carter. This podcast is sponsored by the Mama Knows Not a Podcast, as well as iFreak Publishing. Today, we have an educator with us, an author, and has incredible credentials, I have to say, and has authored, she just told me, over 30 books. So we're going to have to narrow it down, but welcome, Sheri, to the podcast. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. And also, just tell me about how you got into writing and how you've created 30 books.
Oh, sure. So actually, I started as an educator and a science illustrator. I actually did a summer internship at the Smithsonian in D.C. Wow. And really, toured all their, fun, icky things in the background of the museum and was like, this is really cool. And because I was kind of an outdoors person already, I thought there's got to be a way to combine this and make it fun for kids. And so I kind of came up with some children's books ideas and started sending them out. And early on, this was easier to do. Now it's really hard to get published. But so a few books got published, and I kind of rolled with it. And they never wanted to publish quite as much as I did, so I published myself some and put them out there. And I tell you, once the internet really came into being, it just blew up, because then anybody could access and find my art and stuff for kids. So it really has been a growing and expanding universe of, children's books and nature art. So it's all good. Been a fun time.
That's incredible. Is there a specific age group that your books are best suited for?
Yes. I taught college science, but I do books for K, like K4, K5.
Okay.
Some of my books are a little bit more intellectual. The book I just did with iFreak, it is called The Rodent, the Bee, and the Brazil Nut Tree. And that's for a little bit more older reading audience, because it talks about kind of rainforest, dependence, animals and plants working together, and which is called mutualism. And so it has some vocabulary. It's a little bit high end. So really that can be worked with a 3 to 6th grade grouping. A lot of my resources on my website are for K6, but I also have high school stuff because I love science, and I have a lot of biology and stuff on there too. But my favorite is the children's books, of course, because then I can draw animals and bugs and all kinds of cool and icky things, praying mantises, and some of the stuff is a little creepy for some people, but I just love anything nature. So there we go.
Creepy crawlies are not my favorite things, personally, but my son loves them. He loves them.
and I have to admit, there have been times where I've had a story that I wanted to put a spider in, and I bring up a photo of a spider to illustrate, and I get the heebie-jeebies, and it's like, okay, this isn't good, because they can be a little creepy.
Yeah, I know. Only I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, and so we had big wood spiders,
Right.
So that'll ruin any kind of. I don't mind a daddy long leg. Don't get me wrong, but a big wood
Right.
spider.
I get it. When I was in grad school, I got work at an entomology department before I was even doing the books, and they had a tarantula that was part of my job to feed, and I would get the willies sometimes, because when you put food in, and it would go running over. It was like, okay, that's not really something I want to see every day.
Tarantulas are so. This is a big tangent, but tarantulas are really cool. I had the opportunity to go to Costa Rica, and there was this huge tarantula walking across the street, and cars literally stopped for it to make sure it got across. I was like, anywhere in America, someone would have just ran that thing over, but people stopped to make sure it got across the road. I was flabbergasted.
They're pretty unique and remarkable. And of course, we use them as the stuff of nightmares, but in truth, they're not really that poisonous. I'd be more worried about a scorpion than a tarantula. But
absolutely. Now, you mentioned one book that you just recently published with iFreak Publishing. Is there another? And you said you have another book that's coming out. Can you tell us about that one?
The other one I did this year is called A Night Walk, and I did this with with AM Inc. Publishing. And this is, this was kind of a dream of mine because I love to take kids out in the woods. And I just did a night walk program where we took kids out, and the things that happen at night are so mysterious and sometimes scary, but the fact is most mammals are nocturnal. So how do you really get to know them? You have to go out at night. And so this was kind of a fun thing. It's got a rhyming verse and some hidden pictures, and it's good for any age group, but it also has some science about, what's out at night and what's not, and what their adaptations are for nighttime, and kind of fun in that way. So this one I think will be included in the the machines that they're putting the Roar machines that they're trying to get free books for kids. So hopefully that'll be part of that process, because we want to really get them in the hands of kids so they can enjoy learning about night stuff.
All the night creatures.
Well, I mean, I think even, it's our natural form to be a little bit afraid of night because we don't see as well. But that's when a lot of the stuff is out there rock and rolling. In the morning you find tracks that, happen during the night. And you're like, what was going on out there while we were sleeping? And so this book kind of talks a little bit about that. So that's kind of a fun thing. Cool.
We live in Florida, and my husband gets up really early. He has European working hours, so he'll be up at like 3 or 4, and he's seen like bobcats a couple times.
Yeah, you guys have mountain lions.
We probably do, but I've not seen one.
No, and you won't. You might hear one.
And foxes. He just saw some foxes the other day.
Florida has some great wildlife.
They do, and they've got some really annoying red ants
and big spiders.
And it's really exciting. Yeah. And some poisonous snakes. Or venomous snake?
Yes.
Poison. And I always get them confused. What other books are part of the Roar's reading series?
I have 2 books that are involved in it, the Night Walk and this one, but I know that Penny, I forget, has put a bunch of different amazing books in that grouping. I really haven't seen them. I'm looking forward to seeing the first machine get into a school and get some photographs of what it really looks like, because it's a process to get books into the hands of kids. And it used to be in the old days, they would have salespeople that would go to schools and bring your books and get them in the libraries, and things are kind of changing and in flux. So it's hard to get the books out there. So it's really important for things like this to, let kids know like what kinds of things you can find. I also want to say that as far as kids are concerned, they love anything. They're natural scientists. They love animals. They love nature. So anything that you're going to put forward to them that shows them something interesting is going to just light up their brains. So for me, whatever books are in there are going to just make them crazy happy. So it's a great project, and I hope it's really successful.
What does it mean for you to be part of it specifically?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure yet. We'll see how it goes. Fair. I live in a rural area, so my first thought was we got to get this in the rural schools. But it's a challenge because you need sponsor organizations to, help pay for them, because we want them to be free for the kids, because the whole point is to get them into the kids' hands. So, Penny has been scrambling to try to get good corporate sponsors so that this can happen. So it's a little early to know yet how well it's going to penetrate the rural school districts. But I mean, as soon as they figured out the pattern, I'd really like to see it up in upstate New York here, where we can get it into some small schools and kids can get their hands on the books. Because books are the thing. Books are the way to open doors into different places they'll never see otherwise.
Or at least, I mean, it could just be the spark, you know what I mean? That ignites a deeper passion. That's what I think too, where you just never know what your kid is going to like become or love.
That's right. That's right.
So I try to do that for my kid. I'm not a creepy crawly person, but
right.
He does have a few books about bugs, and he'll tell you all about butterflies and the chrysalis and the pulpo or whatever. I'm like, what are you talking about?
No, I have a little one that's into fish, and I don't mind fish, but I don't get it. And he just talks about fish all the time, and ocean and fish and sharks and how, what their kill factor is. And I'm just like,
oh no.
Well, apparently that's a big deal in shark books is, how dangerous are they? A whale shark versus a great white shark. And I'm learning from this child who's 5 because he knows, he loves that stuff. It's lit him up. It's great.
No, I think that's incredible.
And does your little boy bring home bugs?
I've definitely had a few roly-polies come home, and he's really an expert at finding snails, which
cool.
Didn't know that you could find them in St. Augustine grass, but apparently they exist.
They're around. Yeah,
there they are.
We started a what we call just a bug collection of found dead insects, which I know. So I have a little piece of foam and pins, and when they find bugs, I'm like, okay, let's pin them, and we pin them and we identify them, and they just call it their collection, and I just think it's kind of cool that they're natural scientists without any training. It just shows you that how their brains work is really like full of wonder. I love that.
Yeah, and then that curiosity is inspiring research and knowledge. That's really cool too. Yeah, I mean, I personally would never have thought to create a board bug, but I see the value in that. Actually,
no. Well, I mean, they're going to bring stuff home. You might as well look it up, see what it is. You teach them research early. How do you find stuff? Dichotomous keys. At a young age. I don't know.
No, I think it's great. Yeah, no, I love that. So as an educator and a writer, what is a piece of advice that you would share with any aspiring writer?
That's a really good question. One of my strong impulses is to ask writers who are writing about nature and science to be accurate. Kids are getting their subtle early science from picture books. Mm-hmm. And when they have really glaring science errors in picture books, I cringe because it's giving a wrong impression, and it's starting them off with, I don't mind smiling animals if it's for a really young age group, right. But what bothers me is when they're putting, tigers in Africa and lions and out in the jungle, like lions do not live in the jungle, the king of the jungle. Where did that come from? It's, so be accurate. When you're working on your books, try to really research and make sure you're making something that's also going to be teachable as well as entertaining. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important part for me as far as creating a really good quality, long-lasting book. In that way.
I think that's great because there's definitely misconceptions that I like having a kid and going back and reading things or looking stuff up like what I'm talking about. I'm like, I didn't know that, or I didn't know that's where that was. I didn't realize that, jaguars and like other animals were similar, or, a leopard is, or I didn't know these things. And especially like with fish, my son's also obsessed with anything in the water. Yeah, it's just like all the different things that you're like misinformed about. And so I think that's a really, really good point.
Yeah.
Just home.
Yeah. And it doesn't take, there's a lot of information out there, so it doesn't take that much to kind of, to put it together. And, and I just think it's an important part of how we can also use picture books in the classroom, because I think that's an important thing is, turning them on to science through picture books in the classroom is a big deal. In some districts.
Absolutely. Now, where can people find more about your books as well as all your educational materials?
So they're on Amazon and they are around, but I also have a website that has a lot of information and a store. It's called exploringnature.org. And there is you can download stuff and print stuff out and color stuff, and most of it, is easy to access. And you can find the books in that store. And also at the publishers themselves have them. Ifrig Publishing and AM Inc. Publishing have those 2 books. I do recommend, as far as me going, you can just Google me and a lot of stuff comes up. Google's amazing. And I am on Amazon, of course, and in a lot of bookstores, but you never know where. It's totally random. So I occasionally will see a book at the zoo of mine at the zoo, and it's like, wow.
That's exciting.
I know. I was at the, I think it was the Bronx Botanical Garden, and I was in the library with my little ones, and there was one of my books from like 15 years ago that was in their collection. I was like,
wow.
So you never know. But
that's Instagram worthy moment right
yeah,
there.
I know. I was pretty excited, like,
Oh, I love that though.
Yeah, it was fun.
Sheri, thank you so much for your time. Really
Thank
appreciate
you,
it. I love that
Brianna.
you're writing nonfiction books, because it took me a while as a kid to get into science. And I think that having those books accessible and at the reading level that kids need them and engaging in the way that kids kind of need in order to be intrigued by it is so important to their foundation and fundamentals. So you
Thank
can
you. I
find,
hope so too. Yeah.
absolutely. Remind us of your website one more time.
It's exploringnature.org.
Perfect. So that's where you can find Sheri. And until next time, I hope everybody enjoys reading and writing.
Thank you.